Welcome to another episode of Casual Conversations. I'm John Doolin, and I'm here with a really special guest, a guy that I have actually met on social media, but he lives just a few miles from me, doing some really cool things. Terry Bean, and I'm going to give Terry the microphone so that he can give you his elevator speech.
Yeah, thanks for having me, John. I'm excited to be here. Elevator pitches are hilarious to me because I ran networking groups for like 20 some years, and zero times have I ever met anyone in an elevator. It's not one of those things, right? In 60 seconds, people don't know how long 60 seconds is. So I always taught people that we need to work on our ask, right? What is your ask? And the ask was very simple: name, business category, and then who's the one person, what's the one company, or if there was one big idea that could elevate your game, what would that be? So I'll probably follow that format. So my name is Terry Bean. Company is Try Bean, because that just seems like really good advice, at least to me. And then the thing that I do is I'm in the business and personal growth space. So I'm looking for individuals that want to grow as professionals, that want to grow their business, or that want to grow their brand. And I deliver the goods through three mediums. I'm a business coach, I'm a trainer, and I'm a keynote speaker. So those are the worlds that I play in. Now I always get confused. Am I a coach? Am I a speaker? Am I a trainer? But that's the wrong layer of abstraction, right? What I am is a business growth strategist.
So I love the way that you put that. And here, the elevator speech was never one of my favorites either, Terry. And however, I will say that in my travel time over the course of the last 2 years, unfortunately, I spent a lot of time in elevators in different hotels. And I've written about this in the past. And you're right, the elevator speech is just awkward because you're literally in a room with a stranger and you're both confined. You've got nowhere to go. So I have morphed my elevator speech also into what I call my seatmate speech from all the flights to and from. And I am that guy. And if there's anybody watching this who's been stuck next to me on a plane, I'm that guy that you want to put your earbuds in real quick, take a couple drinks real quick, and then pretend you're sleeping the rest of the flight because I'm going to talk your ear off otherwise.
You're like, I see an opening, I got my chance, I'm going for it. Let's do this. I don't mind that. If the conversation's interesting, right?
Mhm.
It's like, my wife and I have very different tastes in television shows. And, in order to keep harmony, I'll pick some, she'll pick some. And I never mind when she picks some because I can usually catch up on some sleep.
Yeah, I love that. Um, I that seems to be the story of my life, except my wife always picks what we watch and then falls asleep. And so then I'm stuck watching something that, well, we trade off. So,
She would
yeah,
tell you I do the same. She
yeah,
would, I'm your wife in our situation here.
yeah. So, Terry, we got introduced by a guy named Jason Tagg, and he doesn't realize it, but he introduced us months ago when Jason attended the TEDx event in Detroit, which we'll talk a lot about. However, one of the things I like to do is I like to drop little, call them Easter eggs or whatever, just little nuggets throughout these videos where I like to mention people just to see if they watch the video. Because, I'm that guy who does all the data tracking and, I get a lot of feedback on my writing, specifically on LinkedIn, but people were like, oh, I love your email because I blast out everything I write gets blasted out to my readers via email. And what someone was actually shocked one day when I said, "Yeah, I really appreciate you actually reading it." And they're like, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, the app that I use actually tells me who opens the email and who actually scrolled to the bottom of the email." And so I can tell if you've actually read the email. And I get a lot of 5-star clicks, like almost. So it goes out at 4 o'clock in the morning. Most people tell me they get it at 4:01, and then I get a lot of clicks from my industry at 4:02. I'm like, even the internet tells me it takes 3.5 minutes to read my post. So I like to drop little nuggets. So Jason is turning 50 today, the day you and I are recording this. By the time people watch this, Jason will have been 50 for a week. And so I just want to wish Jason a happy birthday today. And my LinkedIn and Facebook posts today are actually about Jason. He doesn't know it yet. By the time he watches this, he'll know it. So I just want to give that little shout out. So Jason was posting a lot leading up to the TEDx events. And one of the things I love about following people like Jason Tagg is he's constantly into the motivational and self-education the industries, I guess. Yeah. And I don't even know if it's really an industry or if it's a community. And so I started following you, watched a couple of your talks, and then of course you posted a day or two ago about wanting to do 100 podcasts within a certain amount of time. And of course, I'll jump on that offer any day because consider yourself my Delta seatmate right now. So
where are we going? Where are we going?
Yeah. So what I'd like to do is kind of dive into the TEDx thing first. Then I want to talk about your books as well. So how did the TEDx thing come alive, and how did you get involved with that? And I know a couple people who produce these events in other countries, and I understand a little bit about the financial commitment that you have to make this come true. And as much as you're willing to share or comfortable sharing, I know that a lot of the people that are going to watch this have an interest in that because they dream of being on that stage someday.
Absolutely. So before we get into that, happy birthday, Jason. Thank you for connecting John and I evidently twice. And, we're both happy that you did so. So thank you for that. And, I will tell you, we both got a similar color beard. I have less beard today. Welcome to the club, homie. Welcome to the club. 50 is nifty. That's what they say. And it feels like the new 28. I don't know, something like that. So TEDx Detroit started back in 2009. At the time, I was running a group called Motor City Connect. It was a business networking organization that grew really, really fast. So we had a pretty cool platform to launch TEDx Detroit. And my what would I call him? I would call him my wingman. I would call him my shotgun rider. I would call him my partner and the guy that really helped blow Motor City Connect up, Charlie Wahlberg, who's an exceptional marketer, runs a company here called Curve Detroit. Charlie called me one August afternoon and said, "Hey, good news. We're going to be speaking at a TED event. In fact, we're going to be putting on a TED event." And I said, "Okay, cool. Who's Ted?" And he said, "Who's Ted?" "Ted, the TED events, those videos I keep sending you." And I'm like, "Oh, I didn't see me in any of those videos, homie. So I never watched any of them. So what do we, I still don't know what we're talking about." He said, "TED, technology, entertainment, and design. Those are the three areas that really drive innovation. TED's been around, and at the time it was a little over 30 years. It's been around for 30 years, and it's like the hottest ticket to get into. Remember that talk that Bill Gates gave, and he said it's kind of shitty that only poor people get malaria, and he opened a big jar of mosquitoes on the stage." I was like, "No, but I like the premise of that." And so he was like, it's a conference, it's a day-long event, and we'll just grab a bunch of speakers and we'll put them on stage and we'll share some empowering messages. I was like, well, it's 2009. Detroit is not doing particularly well, so we need all the inspiration, all the innovation we can get. So if we could fire up our audience, I think this is a worthwhile endeavor. And, to be fair, when he said we were going to do the TED event, I heard singular. I didn't realize that 15 years later, I'd still be talking about TED. But it's one of those things that once you get involved with, it's really hard to put down. Now, my team will tell you that I quit every single year, like 5 times a year. But I'm not a very good quitter. What can I tell you? So it's been an amazing experience. We've done some of the hottest venues in the Detroit area, Fox Theater, Detroit Opera House, Cobo Hall. Well, it wasn't, yeah, it was Cobo at the time. When they relaunched Cobo Hall, we did it there. We were one of the first events there. We've been at the Gem. We did a little field trip to the GAR, the Guardian of the Republic building. Where else have we been? The Max Fisher, the Music Hall. We were just at Motor City Soundboard, so Masonic Temple a couple of times, the Wright Museum. So we've been in some of the just absolute gems in our area. We've had over 400 presenters and artists get up on that stage, and every year we finish that event, and every year I look at our team and I say, man, we set the bar really high. We're never going to top that. And every single year we do. Even in COVID, man, we switched the whole thing and made it virtual so people could still attend, which was an amazing feat. Should have just canned the whole idea, but we're determined, man. We're determined to make Detroit a better place. So that's what that's been about.
I love that. And so it's that last sentence is interesting to me, Terry, because I moved here in 2017, and I learned very quickly that you don't get to talk trash about Michigan or Detroit. And it's interesting because I've lived all over the country. I grew up in upstate New York. I lived in Florida, South Carolina, Virginia, Kansas, Nebraska, and I've traveled all over the country and hit almost every state for work, where I've spent significant amounts of time, from a week to months. And this is the only place that if you say something negative about the state, about the city, about a sports team, you had better be prepared to back it up with facts, and be prepared to have a debate and a conversation. And what I learned as I got to know people here was in 2008, when everything crashed, more than 9 million people packed their bags and left. And those that stayed to fight. They stayed to do what you're doing, and that is bring back the positivity, bring back the energy, put the pride back in Michigan, but also in Detroit. And I love that because, I complain a lot about, the weather. I'm like, I want to move somewhere warm. And, my wife lets me complain about it. And then she reminds me that, I don't do well in the heat. And this is probably the place I'm going to be, because if it hits about 90 degrees, I'm miserable. There's a picture of us in Belize, and I'm standing on the dock, and I am I'm barely wearing anything, and I'm miserable. I'm standing there like this as sweat is pouring off of me. And my wife, who loves the heat, it's just, she loves it and laughs at it. But it's one of those things where, you think that you've found your passion, you found where you're supposed to be. And I love the passion that you have in that you've quit multiple times throughout the year. And I can tell you, I don't know how well you know Jason Tagg, but I can tell you, I know why he's drawn to your message, because that man brings that passion to everything he does. And so who makes the decision about who gets on that stage? Do you and your business partner make the call, or is there a committee within the TEDx team? How does that happen?
So I would tell you that ultimately it's Charlie's choice, right? Charlie's the curator of the event. And so, there's an application process. We all have access to the applications. And then the rest of the group, we've been doing this long enough where we all each have our own very specific list of people that we're trying to bring on stage. So, if there's 32 slots to fill a day, and that numbers rotates depending on the year, but it's pretty close to that. And some of them are artists, some of them are musicians, some of them are dancers, some of them are poets, some of them are other special interest categories. So there's probably really 22 speaking slots, like someone's going to get up and just flap their gums. maybe 10 of those folks come from the application process, and the other dozen or so are hand selected, whether they're, business folks that have done something fascinating, or, famous comedians, or folks that have left the area and come back. And that's a key point. The only true criteria we have to get on that stage is you have to have a tie to Michigan. Easiest if you live here at present. But if you lived here, or if you went to school here, or used to work here, all of those qualify. You have a cousin that lives here, that doesn't count. That's not part of the criteria.
That's fair. Fair enough. So, to me, after researching you, it's obvious why Charlie came to you, why Charlie picked you as a partner in this. You have an interesting story, and I'd like to dig into your books, and starting, with your first book. If you're comfortable talking about the motivation to writing that book, I think people would love to hear that story.
So I mentioned Motor City Connect, this business networking organization. I started that unofficially in 2005, officially in 2006, and it really grew through '07, '08, '09, 2010. I started it as an outpouring of two things. Number one, I was frustrated with the local networking scene here. I went to some BNI meetings, I went to some other meetings, and I didn't find like what I was looking for. And I had been involved in a group down in Columbus, Ohio, where I lived in between 95 and 2000. And I kind of wanted to recreate something like that. In the same breath, I was connecting with people on LinkedIn in 2004, 2005, and I'm connecting with people all over the world, and I'm learning about their culture, their business, what they do, how they live, and I was fascinated by it. And one day I recognized that none of them gave a shit about Detroit. And frankly, why should they? But at the time, Detroit was on a serious downward slide, right? The whole area. You mentioned 9 million people left Michigan. That's not the right number, right? Because that's 90% of the state. So, but there was a lot of people leaving, man. You're right about that part. And I knew that if we were going to save ourselves, it was literally going to have to be us doing it. The big three weren't bailing us out. The country wasn't bailing us out. We needed to create a solid entrepreneurial class. Motor City Connect starts. We're running meetings. In fact, at times we were running 14 meetings a month. So I got to watch a lot of people do a lot of networking, and a lot of it was done, let's call it poorly. Let's be polite and call it poorly. And so after watching it enough, I said, well, I'm going to build a training on how to network more effectively. So I used to run an hour training session before the meetings. People would show up, and I broke that training into 5 areas: the stuff you need to know before you network, stuff to do at a networking event, why you should be networking in the first place, what to do after the networking takes place, and then this thing I called the universe's relationship to networking. I got a very strong spiritual universal bent to me. And so I was delivering that training repeatedly, and I thought, one day I was sitting at a networking event, and a guy was a book publisher sitting across from me, and he's like, you got a book, and why don't you write one? And I said, well, because it sounds like a pain in the butt. And he said, well, what if I put training wheels on it? And I said, what does that mean? He's like, I'll take care of all the stuff, you write. And I was like, all right, well, I'll just take the content that I use in the training and write it. That seems easy enough to me. So that's what I did. And I put that book out, and I remember I was sitting I had like a little holiday party with 25, 30 friends, December of, I think it was 2007. And I said, hey, I'm doing it. By March, I'll have a book. It might have been 2008. By March, I'm going to have a book. And they're like, really? What's it going to be about? It's going to be about networking. What else would it be about? Yeah, good point. Okay. And so on March 26th, I released a book. Now, it was March 26, 2010. So it was like maybe a year and a half to 2.5 years in actually putting it together. I didn't say which March. I just said March. And so at the third anniversary party for Motor City Connect, our third birthday party, I launched the first book, and it was kind of a cool experience. And I just packaged one up and stuffed it in the mail yesterday, and it's on the website now, makes it easier for people to buy. And that was a cool experience. In fact, I just posted about that on LinkedIn this morning. So fun times.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that, as a, because you've got two books, correct?
I do.
Yeah. And so I'm always fascinated by published authors. And I don't really care what you've written, because the commitment that it actually takes to sit down and write, it's something I look up to, and it's something because I have committed over the last couple of years that I'm going to sit down and write every single day. Um, and I've chosen to write about leadership, motivation. We share a very similar message. So I love that you did it. I love that you've done a second book. And what would you say outside of, you've got a great business partner who says, you just write, I'll do the rest. Um, what is, as you work through that process of getting the book written, then of course, you've got the humble part where they come back and say, hey, you made a bunch of mistakes, or change this, change that, correct this. What, in your opinion, what's the hardest part about writing the book outside of the sitting down and putting words on paper?
It's funny. The hardest part for me wasn't the writing the book. The hardest part for me is selling the book, letting people know, standing there going, buy my book, buy my book. That doesn't resonate with me at all. When I started Motor City Connect, I had three intentions, right? I wanted to help people grow. I wanted to help our community grow. And I wanted to throw my magnet in the middle of town and make sure people knew who I was. Right. And so, because I didn't want to cold call, I didn't want to be like, hey, I'm Terry Bean. I'm this guy that can do things. I wanted people calling me. And so for me, you put the book out and you're like, well, it's out. People should just run up and buy it. But not how it works, man. If you're not beating them over the head a little bit with the fact that it's out there, they don't know. And you can't be upset when people don't do what you want them to do if you don't let them know what you want them to do, right? And it's so for me, it's that piece. The rest of it, though, the writing, the having the idea, those things are relatively easy when I can make the time to sit down because, we have three dogs in this house. I have a wife in this house. We had a kid in this house until she went to college, and there is no shortage of distractions between the living and then all the crap that goes on social media. So blocking out the noise is probably the hardest thing about the actual writing process.
I would agree with everything that you said. So, from a marketing perspective, what is your advice for someone who is in that stage where they've got a book and they're trying to put it out there? And I ask this because I get contacted a lot on social media because I write book reviews and I post them to my website and in other places. And I've got a bookshelf over there full of books that people have sent me saying, hey, would you read this and do a review? What is your advice to them on the best ways to market that without being that? Because I think that is what I hear from a lot of them is, I'm not comfortable with self-marketing.
Yeah, so what they're doing, right? Find somebody that's got a voice, that's got an audience, and leverage their audience is a great way to get it out there. The other thing is to talk about the process, right? If you've already written the book, you can still market and promote and put information out there, but it's a lot easier if you're letting people know, hey, I'm writing a book. Hey, I've written 10,000 words of this book. Hey, this book is about this. Hey, this character development or this twist or this big idea is really good. And just kind of pull the curtain back and be open and transparent about what you're going through. Don't make it all rosy because it's not all rosy, right? Some of it sucks. And for whatever reason, maybe we're just hardwired to look at the negative. People respond and relate to the shit side of it better than the good side of it. So be open to that. And then once the book's done, I had a client of mine who's a rabbi, Tamara Colton, lovely lady. She had written a book called Oranges for Eve, and she wanted help marketing it. And so I went through that book with my highlighter and just put, this is a great sentence, right? Make a meme, make a social media post just using this idea. And by the time I was done with that process, I think I'd given her about 130 pieces of content that she could just post, right? And share the thoughts behind the thought. And that seemed to help her move the needle quite a bit on sales.
That is really good advice. And what's interesting about that advice is, um, because I don't think a lot of people think about that. I think they think, oh, I've already packaged this all in the book and I'm not going to reuse this content. But that is, in my opinion, that's primarily the reason why you write the darn book is you're going to go out there and talk about the book. You're going to talk about what's in the book. You're going to tell those stories. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. Now, I did watch a video yesterday. So the story about your second book, number one, the title is catchy. So that if I'm being honest with you, Terry, that's actually the first thing about you that drew me in months ago. And so if you're open to it, I'd love to hear. I'd love to talk about your second book for a minute.
Yeah, so the second book was I'd always planned on writing a second book. In fact, I've got two second books that were, a third of the way written and a half of the way written. But none of them came out because I just didn't get around to finishing them, right? So sticking to it's another tough challenge. But our daughter went through some crap a couple of years ago. It was her freshman year in college. She had an incident where someone that she was close to killed themselves, and that kind of set her in a little bit of a tizzy. 9 months later, someone else that she was close to OD'd on some pills right in front of her. And she had to help that young lady get sorted and to the hospital and all that crap. And those two incidences in such a short period of time basically caused what the doctors determined was an emotional seizure, where she went almost catatonic for hours on end, where she wouldn't talk. And if she did talk, it sounded like a 4-year-old that was struggling to put words together. And it was a really, really scary time. And I didn't want to be the dad that called and lectured her all the time. So I became the dad that started writing a series of essays. And I had written 15 of them. They were all kind of under this moniker of mindset matters, right? Because how we perceive things is so much greater than what actually happened, right? So instead of reacting to a situation, I encourage people to respond to a situation, because that takes some emotional or intellectual or some gut reaction, and kind of mellows it out a little bit, because we're putting some other feeling or other thought into it, as opposed to just those knee-jerk reactions. And so in writing these series of essays, I wrote her one called Finding Harmony in the Fucks You Give. And I sent that to her and she responded to it. And I said, that would make a pretty good title for a book, wouldn't it? And she laughed and she said, yeah, it actually would. I said, is the information in here helping? And she's like, yeah, I don't know how come I haven't learned some of this over time. And that bummed me out, because I'm like, I've been modeling these behaviors your entire life, because this isn't new to me. But it dawned on me, if we don't tell people why we do a thing the way we do it, they may not connect that dot. So just because I was doing it, but I wasn't really explaining why I was doing it, I could understand why I missed the mark. So I wrote another 15 or so essays, and there's 32 different lessons inside of that book. Alex Borza is a co-author on that book, and I wanted Alex to do some editing, and she did a little bit, but much like my first editing process, I was like, guys, I'm like a C English student. You got to have more feedback for me than this. But people always say you write just like you speak, right? Like I can read your words and I can hear you saying them in my head. And there's something authentic about that that people don't want to mess with, I guess. I think it's a polite way of saying you're not that good of a writer. But it was an interesting piece, man. And so I asked Alex because I wanted the book to be done and I wanted it to be done better than I would do it on my own. She's a great graphics person, so she made a bunch of really cool images and she designed the cover. And if you're strictly judging a book by the cover, this thing is both cool and fire simultaneously. So you'll have to check that out, and it's easy to find on my website. Um, but we put some really good exercises together. There's a workbook that goes with it to help people find harmony in the fucks they give. The goal is to reduce stress, to reduce anxiety, to reduce angst, and simultaneously to find more joy. It's really about figuring out what matters most to you.
I love that. And you mentioned your website, trybean.com. It's a great website. I'm a little bit jealous. I've got my own website, and I've talked to myself a lot about doing what you've done. So very envious. I salute you on that. Well, very well done. Um, you mentioned the book is written how you speak, and I agree. That's to me, that's the great thing about when I read a book that has been written by somebody that I actually know and I've talked to. That is cool because, yeah, you do hear the book in their voice. So, in having said that, have you considered, or because I don't believe your books exist in audio form, is that correct?
They don't yet. And I've had a handful of people tell me they have to. And the only reason they don't is because there's no way that I could read my book without either editing it as I go or adding commentary as I go. And so I'm trying to figure out how to just sit down. And my books both of them are intentionally, they're written like I'd want to read. So there's not a section of that book that's longer than 3 pages, right? Both of them are effectively a series of blog posts and not much more than that with some transitions tying everything together. So if I could figure out how to spend 2 minutes to read one section and save all my commentary for the end, like you could have this is the book and this is the director's cut of the audiobook, right? That seems to be what needs to happen. I have to make the time to do it.
So, have you heard of a guy named Jocko Willink?
Hell yeah.
Okay, so he's written a few books, and I will tell you that I have read his books and I have listened to his books. And you should send him your second book because that guy, he doesn't give a fuck about anything or anybody. It's all about his message. And Terry, that might have been the first time I have actually cussed in any of my podcasts, just for what it's worth.
I've given you cover. It works out okay. You're good.
Yeah. So, but here's what I loved about it is when because I love his material so much, and I've used a lot of his material in my corporate world of training and developing people. And it is so easy because he writes the way he speaks as well. He did not read the book for the audio word for word, and he offered No excuses for it. He offered no apologies for it. He just did it. And so, and there's not a lot of them, but there are moments where he he goes a little bit off topic or he adds a little bit extra in. And there are other authors who have done it as well. However, I make the comparison between the two of you because I think you both have a pretty similar message about just living a better life, being a better human, and not letting all the noise of the outside world kind of crowd into your head.
I appreciate that, and that's that Jocko. I can't go so far as to say he's a hero, but he's certainly an interesting fella and who's done amazing things. And so, A, I'm honored to be even brought up in that conversation with him for sure. And B, I do like that idea because to your point, it's not about the words. It's about what you do with them. It's about the message. And, I was a huge fan of the movie The Secret when it first came out. It basically re-taught me things I already knew and understood. And what I liked about the way they did the movie was it was 14 different points of view of the exact same story, right? So you may not get the aha moment until an hour and 22 minutes into it. Somebody else might have picked up on it in minute six, right? But they use different touch points to say the same thing over and over and over again until it finally convalesced into somebody's head and said, "Oh, I get it now."
Mhm.
And I think there's something relevant and important about that because one of my marching orders, my mantra is meet people where they are. And in an effort to do that, you can't just keep saying the same thing. You gotta, maybe you're giving the same message, but delivering it differently depending on the audience.
Yeah, there is tremendous truth to that. When you mentioned that when we talked the other day, and I think, communication itself is, in my personal opinion, the most mysterious beast in the world because I can say a sentence to you that based on all of your life experiences, you interpret one way. But if I turn and I say that same sentence to my wife and her experiences, I could be on a offensive lane pretty quickly there.
Yeah, you're married to my wife. Wait, what? No. I totally get that. And it's interesting because we communicate from our perspective and we understand from our perspective, right?
Mhm.
And it's rare that we're gonna ever talk to someone who has the same perspective, so that's why it becomes really, really important to think about not only what you're saying, but who you're saying it to. I actually studied communications. I had a master's degree in that stuff. And so I've spent a lot of time dealing with people, interacting with people, not only from a theoretical perspective in grad school, but I was bartending while I was in grad school. So I was like getting to apply in real time, with some people that may not have been as sober as others, but it was a cool experience to be able to stack and see how things actually work.
Yeah, the that is, I've never been a bartender, but that has got to be a class all in its own. You should probably get a degree for surviving that. I always have respect for bartenders, just because like you see the best and the worst of the same people in the course of just a couple hours. And I actually, yeah, there's so much more we could talk about on that because I've always found that there's two ways to really figure out who a person is: get them angry or get them drunk, and then you figure it out pretty quickly. And anyway, so another thing we talked about was, I asked you the question that, I think we all probably hate getting asked is, what do you do? How do you make your money? And you had told me a story about, way back in the day, back in 2005, I think, or maybe 2008, when you first dove into LinkedIn before LinkedIn was social media. And yeah, I think I want to touch on that just a little bit because I think I shared with you I didn't join LinkedIn until 2011. Um, but the majority of my audience and the folks who are going to see this are on LinkedIn. And so, if you wouldn't mind just for a minute, kind of talk about how all that started and how you taught people how to use it. Um, and and I would love to hear from a veteran of the platform when it was brand new to where it's evolved to, what your thoughts are.
Yeah, it's a trip, man. I don't know how I found it. Somebody posted you can see what member of LinkedIn you are, right? And so there's a way to actually check that. And you can go in your profile and see what date you joined, but that doesn't have the same gravitas as finding out I was member 1,500,123 or something like that. And so it was late November 2004 that I actually got on there. And so I remember I got three invites in about a 10-day period. And the first one was from a buddy of mine on the softball team. I didn't pay any attention to that. Second one was from someone I didn't really know. And the third one was from a lady named Gina Weisenbarger. And Gina's a lady that I networked with in Columbus, Ohio. So I had a lot of respect for her and her networking skill set and connecting abilities. So I was like, well, if Gina's sending this to me, I should take a look. And sorry, Tim Suds, I should have looked when you sent it to me. But I didn't. And so I got on there and I was like, well, this is pretty interesting. And it was November 24th, 2004. And at the time, they literally had 6 degrees of connections that you could actually look at. So you could see who was in the network and you could see who was the top most connected person in your city. And there were a lot of different tools and ways to connect. There wasn't the social feed, right? They stole that from Twitter back in like 2008 when you could start doing the updates. Um, and so it was a nice tool to be able to connect with people. But it was fascinating because when you were inviting people to connect, you had to like give an explanation as to what it was because that was, like Friendster and MySpace were out. Facebook wasn't even available to old heads, right? We didn't get onto Facebook until 2006 when they dropped the requirement for a college email address. And so there was that period of time where the real activity on LinkedIn was happening inside of groups that were tangential, not even a part of LinkedIn. LinkedIn didn't open groups until like 2006 or 7, and it wasn't until 2009 or 10 that you could even get a group as a normal person. And so it was a wild time. So a lot of Yahoo groups were closely tied to it. Lions, LinkedIn Open Networkers was one of the biggest ones. There was a group called My LinkedIn Power Forum that I was really prevalent in, started by a guy named Vincent Wright. And Vincent had probably 300 Yahoo groups that were kind of tied to it and associated. And so it was interesting to be able to meet these people on LinkedIn, but you're really connected with them outside of LinkedIn in these Yahoo groups. A lot of it was done. And then once LinkedIn opened their own groups, then you started doing it inside of their groups. And then that social feed came on. And then, years later, all of a sudden you've got little emoji reactions, right? That's only been around for 4 or 5 years now. But it's been a powerful tool, man. If you're using it correctly, it's a great tool for research to find the people you're looking for. I tell people all the time, your goal is to get the information and then actually do something with it, right? You're trying to break into Blue Cross and Blue Shield, and you want to talk to the vice president of communications there. You go to LinkedIn, do a search, figure out who that is and maybe send them an invitation, but pick up the phone and actually call and ask for that person because the likelihood of you saying, "Hi, I'd like to speak to your VP of communications," and getting that call transferred anywhere other than hung up is low. But when you call and say, "Hey, I want to speak to Andy Hetzel, who's the VP of communications at Blue Cross and Blue Shield," they might actually transfer you to Andy's phone or to his assistant or whatever. So you just get farther along faster.
So I spend most of my day inside of LinkedIn as a recruiter. And I will tell you, Terry, that is really the best advice. So many people sit back and rely on, sending an in-mail or sending a connection request. But the most powerful way is get them on the phone. Even if you don't get them on the phone, get to their voicemail, let them hear your voice. And what I love about, one of the features, it freaked me out the first time it happened to me, but LinkedIn allows you to send a video message within their chat platform. And the first time it happened, I was like, what is this? What weirdo is sending me a video message? But then I'm like, well, that was genius, because now not only am I putting a voice with this person, I can actually see them talking to me. I can see how their facial reactions are. I will say I'm not brave enough. I haven't done it yet. I have done it within Teams to coworkers. Um, but it's a super powerful platform, but the key is do something with it. Get them on the phone. Yeah, and that's something my mentor, where I'm currently at, is that is his number one key to success in placing people, is get them on the phone. And once you can build that the rapport with them, um, and I have, I take a little bit of criticism because I post almost every single day. And a lot of, the criticism is, don't you have anything better to do? The truth is, it doesn't take me that long. But the power behind that is, when I walk into, and I'll tell the first time it happened to me, I walked into a trade show and we're trying to sell a service. And this guy, everybody there is introducing themselves, and then this guy walks up and shakes my hand and gives me kind of a half hug. And I was like, never met the guy before, but he acted like he knew me, and we were in, all because he had been reading my LinkedIn posts. And so there is power there with that platform. And it's happened since then. And it's something I've had to get used to, is that, when I walk into a room, they may be strangers to me. Maybe there's a second or third degree of connection there. But because I choose to be out there with my content, people think, they do know me. They know me because I'm putting myself out there. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, I agree with you. Super, super powerful platform. And so, in your opinion, good or bad, how has the platform changed in, the 20 years now ish, almost 20 years?
Some of it's been great. Some of the additions they make have been a ton of fun. Some of them have been poorly implemented, and some of the best ones they take away before you even get a chance to use them, which is a little bit frustrating. That said, the last 3 years, 4 years, maybe just before COVID started, there was a change, and it became really, once they started adding the likes and the reactions, the content shifted and it became much more Facebooky than it was before. And, because people like to do things for the likes. And that's not the measure I'm going for, right? My ego's intact, man. You like my post, great. You don't like my post, fine. That doesn't change. You mentioned being a guy about the metrics and looking at that stuff. I don't look at that stuff ever, right? I don't track it. I don't pay attention to it. What I pay attention to, did anybody slide into my DMs? Did someone comment and ask me for a meeting? Did someone visit my website or pick up the phone and call me? Those are the things that move my needle, right? The rest of it doesn't matter as much. So making it easier for people to connect. I love if you go to my profile, linkedin.com/in/Terry Bean, at the top, it says, visit my website. And there was a period of time when I had book an appointment, right? So you could actually change those things to buy my book, serve you however you want. And having that one click action is really, really cool. So that's one of my favorite features. Being able to do the LinkedIn Live has been really, really cool, even though you got to use a separate service to do it. Those things are fun. But if there's anything that I would encourage people to use to learn about LinkedIn, it's use the search feature, right? If Facebook understood search the way LinkedIn understands search, LinkedIn wouldn't exist. They would have eaten its lunch a long time ago. But they don't, and as a result, LinkedIn's close to 1 billion users at this point.
I agree with you, and to me, I was not a LinkedIn guy. Like I had it, but I was I think 2011 through 2017, I just saw it as a resume source or a place where I could put my resume. Um, I went all in on Facebook. I even bought the stock. I sat at my computer just ready to buy the stock the day it went live. Never got into Twitter much. I love Reels, so I'm into Instagram because it's easy. Um, I need to probably get into TikTok because a lot of my friends send me TikTok Reels, and I I do have an account, but I have an account so I can watch my kids. So I love where social media is going, but I have some of the same concerns that you have. Is I am okay with someone sharing a Facebooky story as long as there's a lesson at the end of it. Otherwise, stay on Facebook. That's where people want to go to see your food, to see what you're doing for your holidays, whatever. Um, it LinkedIn for me has to be about business, it has to be about teaching, it has to be about making people better, giving people the tools to make it better. And I do agree with you on the stats piece of it. Um, while it is something that I'm cognizant of, ultimately, it's for me, it's about making connections. And I do weird people out because generally, like as soon as they connect with me, I'll send them hey, can we get on the phone and talk? Hey, here's how you can book some time with me. And there are a few times people have like blocked me immediately, and and I'm okay with that. Those aren't my people. If all you want me for is just to have a connection in your Rolodex, I'm probably not the guy to connect with. But if you want to have a conversation, if you want to build a relationship, if you want to help each other to advance your mission, your message, then I'm that guy. And Terry, that's what I really love about what I've learned about you so far. And just the last week is, um, I love that it's about your message. And it's always cool for me when I can see a guy and say, I don't know how this guy makes his money, but he's happy. He's got a positive message. He's available. Like I could find you everywhere I looked once I started Googling it. There's another Terry Bean out there, by the way. Um,
Yeah, tell me something I don't know, Jack. Oh boy. Yeah, and for fun, if you're Googling Terry Bean, I am not the Terry Bean from Portland, Oregon. Just putting that up.
yeah. So we've mentioned it a few times through this episode, but Terry, what is your number one preferred way for people to reach out to you?
Well, up until this new website launch, which was a month ago, and thank you for the compliment. It was the talk about some training wheels, man. My buddy Larry Miller has kind of co-opted a fairly standard site, but he's put training wheels on it to make it easy for guys like me to be able to look like we know what we're doing in terms of web design and a little bit of development. And it's got a whole CRM built into it. You can sell, you can put memberships, you can put courses on there, takes payment right through it. I do my invoicing through there. So this site is absolutely amazing to me now. So before that site at trybean.com existed, I would have told you to connect with me on LinkedIn, right? I like to keep my Facebook a little more locked down. I have a Facebook business page, facebook.com/trybean for those that are there. And I try and keep that more business or at least motivational. And I use my personal Facebook now, to talk shit about the Lions normally, or to high five the Lions at this point. So it's been really interesting. But I don't use that site as much as I used to. LinkedIn is definitely my go-to. Instagram, I'm on and I've got followers there, but I always joke I'm not that great on either side of the camera, so I don't take good photos if I'm the photographer, and I don't take great photos if I'm the subject. So I'm like, I'm not a visual guy. I'm an auditory learner, and so, writing's okay for me, but the rest of that visual communication is an area that continually endeavor to improve upon. I was going to say I suck at, but I continually endeavor to improve upon.
Yeah, I like that version of it. I agree with you from that side of it. I cannot stand to see myself on camera, which is why I keep putting you as the primary. I hate doing those selfie videos. I'm not a selfie fan at all when anybody does it. In fact, there could be the greatest message ever, but if somebody posts a selfie with that message, I really struggle to engage with that content. Um, and I don't, I guess the way, I think when the selfie kind of came about, it just was so vain and so, um, so self-centered, um, that, and I know that that's not how everybody uses it, but I'm that old white guy that I don't like to engage specifically if they're young females posting a selfie. I don't want people to see me as that guy. I've got daughters that age. Um, and it's so I frown away from it myself. And I don't I think that I'm a person you can listen to all day long, but I'm not going to put on a good visual show for you.
I would encourage you to get past that piece, and
Mhm.
and I mean this in all sincerity. There's an authenticity and a clarity that video offers that no other medium does. And I'm not a polished individual by any stretch of the imagination. I often refer to myself as one take Terry. I'll get on, I'll say my thing, and I'll trust that the right words are going to fall out of my face in the right order. I don't script anything. I just talk, man. And if, the message is what matters, right? The
Mhm.
vessel through which it's delivered, I don't think matters as much. Now, there are people that are going to argue with me about that, and I will tell them that they're probably superficial.
Yeah. Um, so Terry, I don't know if you've noticed that there's a lighting difference on your like one half.
Yeah, I was just screwing around with it a second ago. You may have seen me turn the light off by accident once or twice. But yeah, I'm noticing an incredible glow that I don't love. But again, it's not about the visual, man. It's about how
Yeah.
it's about the message. Yeah, I can't. The ring light is fighting with the window, and maybe if I shut the blinds, but again, I'm not that pretty, so my pancake makeup didn't really stick. I don't.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to decide whether or not we edit that part out. So,
No, no, we won't edit that out at all. Again, there's an authenticity on video, John, and
yeah,
me saying I'm not pretty is about as authentic as it gets.
yeah,
I tell people all the time, my wife sometimes be like, "Why are you dressed like that?" And I'm like, "Because if people are paying me for how I look, I'm a model, and I'm not a model. People pay me for how I think. People
yeah,
pay me for what I bring to the table in terms of ideas, prioritization of them, and action steps. That's where I make money. If you're concerned with what kind of bag I'm carrying or my shoes, then you said it earlier, we're probably not going to get along all that well.
yeah. To your point about moving past the challenges I have with the video and the selfies and all that. You're not wrong, and you're not the first person to say that. There's another guy, I'll drop another egg here, a guy, Trevor Martin, that I follow, who is just an incredible artist. He writes phenomenally, and he produces visual content that is absolutely stunning. And this guy, should he ever choose to, I think he can make a hell of a living doing that. He's a trainer by trade. Um, he also runs a coaching and consulting business for CEOs. But he's told me the same thing because, if I post a video on LinkedIn or wherever, a dude just goes nuts over it, and he's constantly encouraged me to just get out there, your words to an image so people know who you are. Obviously, I have a YouTube channel, so I'm working past that. I'm not as consistent as I should be at the YouTube channel, but I'm a work in progress.
I love it, man. Just keep moving forward. That's all we can do, right?
Yeah.
And people forget that everything you've ever done in life that you've gotten good at, you sucked at one point. And even if you weren't like, oh man, this is unbearably bad, right? Maybe you were here, maybe you were good at it, but compared to where you'll be 3 years from now, right? There's a gap, and there's going to be a gap in all of it. And so I think the important piece is just start and then start again tomorrow or the next day.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And that I think if people take nothing from this, take that. Just start. Just get out there and try.
Show up, man. Rule number one for networking for me is show up. In fact, it used to be really easy because it was just show up, but now it's show up and be present because,
Mhm.
again, these things are constant distractions. This is my phone for those of us that don't
Yeah.
know what that is. Um, it's like there's always something going on, and so we have to be present where we are, right?
Mhm.
I talk about the idea of honor the moment you are in.
I agree with that. So Terry, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really thrilled that we've had the chance to get to know each other. Looking forward to following your content, supporting your content, and I've not actually made it to a single TEDx Detroit since I've lived here. It was my goal to make it to the last one, but I was in a training class the same day, so I had to prioritize my employment over my entertainment. So, but it is my goal. The next one is going on the calendar. I plan to be there and to not just virtually clap for you, but to actually clap for you. So, um,
Nice. Love
yeah.
that.
And then, again, grateful. So for those of you watching, check out trybean.com. With this video, anywhere you find this video, you will find in the comments of this video all the links to Terry's content. Please check him out, and whether he likes it or not, give him a like, give him a follow, but don't send him a Facebook friend request. So
Unless I can tell a story about you, you're not getting, that's my filter, right? Can I tell a story about you? And that doesn't mean you're automatically in because I might not like the story I can tell, right? So you still may not pass. But yeah, I went through and cut about 1,500 Facebook
wow.
friends in air quotes, just because I was like, why? Because I went through a period where it was have to tell a story. Then I started speaking a lot, and as soon as you're speaking, people are like, "Oh, I want to be your Facebook friend," and I'm like, "All right, I have to start accepting these." And then I was like, "No, I don't. This is my Facebook. This is
Mhm.
this." Hey, Facebook. Here's a page. You want your Facebook? I'll make this one for you. You can have all the access over there. But yeah, LinkedIn is great, man. And LinkedIn, it used to be if you could fog a mirror, I would accept you. It's changed and tightened up a little bit now because there's just so much spam and
Mhm.
people that aren't actually people that are trying to join or not. They're not who they say they are. Maybe that's a better way.
Yeah, that
Uh,
is. Yep. Yeah,
so
you're very right on that, and they cracked down on it months back, and it was interesting because there's a guy I follow, Justin Welsh, um, and I don't remember what the number was, and I'm going to be cautious with throwing numbers out there since you corrected me on the Detroit number, but That
I didn't
guy.
mean to. I just that was there's 10 million people in this state. We didn't lose 9 million.
Yeah. So, and you're right. I was exaggerating the number, trying to make a point.
Mm,
So I
so little.
noticed that he lost over 10,000 followers just overnight. And, it made news. LinkedIn said, hey, we're going through and we're deleting inactive accounts. So if you haven't logged in more than a certain amount of time, you're gone. If we can't validate that you're an actual human, you're not engaging with people, you're gone. Um, and it was really, I saw the ripple effect of people, specifically those people. And we talked a little bit about, I learned what a marketing pod was the first time I was talking to Terry. um, but these people who they just get on there and they're just about the likes and the follows got just super, super upset about, oh, how did this happen? Well, again, if you're not a person that wants to have an actual relationship, I'm probably not your guy. And so I was thrilled about it because I thought, this is great. I can't believe I had that many fake accounts that I had connected with. And so I have turned up my sensor on that as well. Again, it's kind of a funny story, and I cannot mention his name because I don't have his permission to share. But years ago, a friend of mine, who at the time was my boss, pulls me in and says, "Hey, how do you know this guy?" And I said, "I don't know him at all." "Well, you're connected with him on LinkedIn." Like, "Yeah, I've never met him, don't know him. I just connect. I said, "I'm a LinkedIn whore. I'll connect with anybody." And he's like, "Well, just so you know, I don't think he's a good person." I said, "Okay." And they had an interaction that went horribly wrong. I don't know. I didn't get all the details on it, but they're both athletes, and they were at an event running, and they had this interaction. And so um, I didn't turn my volume up then. I'm just like, yeah, I don't care. I'll connect with anybody. What do I care? They can't hurt me. It's just LinkedIn. But in the last year, I've started to be a little more cautious to say, why are we connecting? And if you're in the United States, and there's a good chance I'll connect with you because I'm a recruiter, and if I can't find you a job, I'd like to find you talent. So there's a real good chance I'll connect there. But I've tried to be more selective with the folks from overseas because if we don't have a purpose where we can help each other, let's just follow each other. We don't have to connect. I can follow you, you can follow me. And if I'm being honest, the followers are probably the ones you want anyway, because if they're following you, they're seeing your content. I can be connected with you and unfollow you, and we're just connected. So if it's about the engagement and sharing with each other and learning from each other, then I think following is probably the best path anyway. So anyway.
I can't spend this much time talking about LinkedIn without giving a shout out to Brenda Meller. I don't know if you follow Brenda, but Brenda wrote a book about how to use LinkedIn to get a bigger slice of pie. And she's a great LinkedIn coach and trainer and publishes all kinds of information both on her page and her Meller marketing page about tips and tricks to use LinkedIn more effectively. And I used to train on it, and then I met her and watched her train, and I'm like, well, crap, I can't do this anymore. She's way better at it than I am.
I love that.
I still train about it, but she's really, really good, and just so many resources and ideas on how to grow using the tool, and would be a wonderful guest for your show.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I love you dropping that name. I'll tag those who we have dropped their name. I'll tag them, or I'll make sure they know it exists so they can feel some love. Terry, I hope you have a fantastic Saturday. Thank you so much for taking the time with me. And being that we probably live within 5 miles of each other, I hope at some point I can shake your hand.
Yeah, let's do that, man. You're probably right off of 59 somewhere, right?
I'm directly in Clarkston. If you know where Neiman's is, I'm not far from there.
Okay, that's right. You're up by Movement. That's right.
Yep. I'm a mile from the office. Love it. Yeah, and thank you for dropping that. I appreciate the dropping of the Movement.
Yeah, man. What up, Brian Sheehan? What up, Jeremy Smith? What's going on, boys?
That's awesome. Yeah, so we will this episode is going to air next Saturday. And I'll shoot you a note when it goes out. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, for watching. Obviously, we do this for reasons, so like and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you want to be updated of when new videos come out, and this will be shared on all the social media platforms. Very grateful that you chose to spend this hour with Terry and I.
Indeed. Thank you. John, great episode. Thank you for having me. Appreciate your willingness to have and engage in casual conversations. I would say it lived up to its name, sir.